Okay, here we go. Our SS technique. This is actually one of my favorite cuts to teach for my standard 2-day hands-on seminar. I saved this one for last because it really tests your skill sets. It's 4 different techniques put together, and it's a really interesting approach to cutting. So anyhow, I'll start off on both sides. To the side areas, I'll be cutting in a quite steep graduated angle, almost at about like say 85 degrees, just borderline right angles, borderline layering. Okay, so to the right side, again, cutting like very steep graduation at about say like 85 degree borderline layering. Now, as you actually do this technique, cutting square through the sides, it's a lot easier said than done. In the majority of my classes, when I teach this final look, probably 75%, they don't get this side square. So it's always essential that every portion of the haircut you nail it perfect. So there's certain aspects that you can pay a bit more attention to, which will assist you in cutting square. Do your best to stand in front of what you're cutting. Again, you can allow your center of balance to assist you to cut square. Second, make sure that your comb is set at that section, so that way you just have to like pull that comb straight out without it deviating, and you know you're over directing the hair just straight from the head. Second, which should be a no-brainer, is to always come back and cross-check. You can cross-check and make sure you're cutting square. And then always like the angle of your fingers and elbows. Okay, so that's where a lot of people get kind of jammed up during the hands-on session, just through the sides. And I've been doing this technique for quite a while. So I'm saying like probably 70% have a little bit of a challenge on the sides, just cutting square. So again, comb the hair to natural fall, make visual assessments. Now as I get around to the bend of the head, I like to stand, again, exactly in front of what I'm cutting. So here I'm like parallel to the shoulders. I'm cutting a super high, acute angle, and I'll break this section into more manageable pieces. I want to control my stroke count. I don't want to comb this type of section like 4, 5, 6 times. There's no need for that. I just need to have strong intention, comb it out once or twice, and then hit it. Okay, so this next section, I'm over directing slightly forward just to start building up weight. Through the back area, I'll start building up weight and length. Okay, and what kills most people when we're doing hands-on with this cut is that the back area from the occipital bone to the crown, I'm cutting like that high 85 degree angle, right? Borderline layers. And then from the occipital bone below, I change my acute angle. So I go in and I cut a much steeper graduated shape. So I go from a higher angle graduation to a lower level of graduation, which is a lot more challenging. So make sure your elbows, fingers, sections are square. Make sure they're parallel. Make sure that your body, as you cut the right side, is a bit slanted. You also need to become that acute angle, which will give you the greatest amount of control. My finger angle changes. Now from the crown to the occipital bone, I'm cutting in that high, steep 85 degree angle. Still combing the hair out a bit, still cutting in that high graduation. And then now as I flow into the area below the occipital bone, I change my angle of the fingers, and that angle gets a lot tighter. And remember, through the back technique, I'm elevating each section slightly, so I'm building up my length also. So my final section on the back will be longer than the length through the sides, because as the hair started to round, I began to elevate and build my length via over direction. Standing in front of the section, combing the hair out, I'm mimicking the angle that I intend to cut. I have my fingers follow my comb to the guideline. Always make sure your guideline is super, super clean. And now from the occipital bone below, I transition into a much steeper, graduated shape. And remember, with each progressive section, I'm elevating the hair slightly. Don't rush this. This technique is really challenging. It's better to take your time and get it right. And the next time you do it, you'll pick up on the pace, and you'll organically become better at it. Now through the left side, I'll be cutting the exact same technique. So through the sides, it's a really high acute angle, like graduation about 85 degrees, borderline layering. I'm standing in front of what I'm cutting. Elbows, fingers, shears, sections, all parallel. Okay, so next section, comb the hair straight out. Watch your stroke count. You don't want to comb out this section too many times. Line up your comb to that section, pull straight out. I have my comb mimic the angle I intend to cut, and I just pop my fingers in there just to secure that hair in place. So that will minimize my margin for error. If I'm using my fingers too much, I'll probably blow my shape. So I'd rather use my comb, because my comb's a lot more stable. Like as I'm combing out a section, my fingertips or my knuckles, they can bend, sometimes without you even knowing it. My comb will never bend. It will always be the exact same shape. So if my intention is to cut a perfectly clean, straight shape, then intelligence dictates that I should follow my comb as opposed to my fingers. Again, standing directly in front of what I'm cutting, cool, calm, collected. You have to have a super strong intention in your mind. And what I mean by this is, I play a game with myself. So what I usually do before I even come out that section, I just do a quick run by in my mind of me cutting that entire section perfectly. Once it sets in my mind and that clicks and my intention is super clear, then I actually physically go out and do it, and I've improved dramatically just by picking up that habit. And then it takes me like a second or two just to fast play it through my head before I actually cut it. Okay, so here we go on the sides. Remember here, as the head starts to round, I'm going to start building up my weight. So I'm over directing forward just slightly. This is the first section where I'm actually building up length. So from the occipital bone to the crown area, I'm still cutting in that high graduation. And then anything that lines up below that occipital bone, I dump the angle of my graduation. So notice how my fingers just went quite tighter. So this shape, it transitions from a tighter graduation to a higher graduation. So my next section, it's more on the vertical side, but just slightly diagonal. I'll elevate higher. And again, from the occipital bone to the crown, it's a high grad. And as I hit that occipital bone area, I transition my fingers. And here I'm cutting in a tighter level of graduation. Make sure that your elbows, scissors, comb, fingers are all parallel. That will assist you into cutting the shape more perfectly. Because if you drop your elbow, your finger angle will probably change. Okay, so notice this angle is much different than the angle from the occipital bone to the crown. But we can still transition. Okay, so next section, remember we'll be elevating the hair slightly higher, which will allow us to build up our length. And that's the intention that we want. High graduation, elbow high, fingers slow. I'm standing in front of what I'm cutting. My body actually is shifted. My left shoulder is high, right shoulder is low. I'm actually in an acute angle as I do this cut. Now, for this shorter lengths, remember to drop that angle. And we have a nice fluid transition from a lower degree of graduation into a higher degree of graduation without a really heavy bump. Graduation through the back is really cool because the principle of graduation is short hair stronger than long hair, so it'll lift it and it'll kick it around. So I'll get a tremendous amount of structural integrity from the occipital bone down, and then from the occipital bone to the crown, I still get that graduation. It'll still give me that lift, and the sides and the back will actually support the top portion of the haircut a lot. Okay, so increasing elevation, watching your stroke count. Make sure you always see a super beyond super clean guideline. If you cannot see that guideline, go back, take a smaller section, take more guideline. If you still can't see it, maybe go back a couple sections and find out where you started to make your mistake. And then from that point, go back and start fixing stuff. Remember, it's always recommended to, as you're cutting, have a very keen, sharp eye, and your focus should be on the technique, the shape, and always be looking for errors. The more errors you find during a haircut, the less errors your haircut actually has. I mean, for me, when I cut, that's what I do. I'm always troubleshooting. If I think a haircut's good, that's nice, but if I go back and I bust it down a little bit, I will always find some errors. And the difference between a mediocre cut and something that's totally super awesome is that they both have errors. Just a super awesome has less errors than a mediocre cut. And if you're always training your eye and you're always like constantly looking for errors, you will improve. Because then when you find an error, you have to figure out why did that error occur. And if it's a habit or a technique, then you know your gaps and you can go back and work on that, find a remedy, and then that way you'll improve. So I find that troubleshooting actually gives you a tremendous amount of growth. Okay, so now to the top area, I'm coming out of section. I'm going to separate the back and the front area, and the section lies from like the mid of both ears. So I'll break this top area into two portions. So I'll work the area from like the mid ears back to the crown in one piece. So here I'm going in and I'll be cutting square. I'll be cutting square layers through that crown area. So I'll take the length, the guideline from the longest portion through the back, and then from there I'll go in and I'm going to hit a 90-degree square shape. So comb the hair straight out, watch it over direction, cutting square. Okay, so I'll come out the next section, and as I cut the right side of the head, I'm standing on the left side. I'm standing on the opposite side because that will help me to over direct the hair more properly. So again, connecting from the longest piece in the back, combing the hair straight out, and I'm cutting square through the top. Make sure you always can see what you're working on. When I'm cutting, you'll always see that my eyes are in a very close proximity to the area that I'm actually working on, because at that point I can see every single tiny detail. Connecting from the back, cutting square. Make sure you comb the hair super clean from roots to ends. Super clean being that the hair that you comb is parallel to the teeth of your comb. That's like the best indicator. Okay, still working this last section. Combing the hair square and straight out. Elbows, fingers, shears, parallel. Okay, so now that the right portion is done, I'll take my guideline from the opposite side, and I'll be cutting the left. So when I cut the left side, I flip my body position. Now I'm standing at that right side's shoulder. Comb the hair straight out. Notice, see that guideline from the back, so make sure you're always connecting that guideline. And then from there, you go in and cut in a square line. Check for symmetry and balance. Next section again, will be cut in the same manner. We're combing square. If you have a problem, if you find combing the hair square is a bit challenging, just set your section. As you comb the hair, set your comb right on that section and just comb it straight out without that comb moving. And that's like, seriously, it's like a no-brainer. That's like the very best way to like comb the hair straight out if you don't want to think about it. Okay, next section again in the same manner. And as you comb the hair, you want to watch your stroke count. You don't want to have to comb that same section too many times. Make sure that the hair that you comb, they're as clean and as parallel as the teeth of your comb. If you get any snags in those strands, that means that whatever you cut, it will not be even. You'll have longer lengths that surpass your guideline just because the hair wasn't combed properly. So just have a super heightened sense of awareness about these particular details. It'll really save you out there. And once you pick up these habits, it's just a matter of like a fraction of a second. Like my eyes will do these really quick cross checks, like zoom, zoom, zoom. Once everything checks in, and then I'll open my scissors and cut. If I see something that's not on, then I won't open my scissor. I'll go back and make it perfect, and then I'll cut. Okay, through the front top area, I'll be working with horizontal sections, and I'll over direct these sections back onto the longest portion of those square layers. So again, over directing back, following the square. The next section again is over directed back, and following the guideline from that very front portion from the ears to crown. And with this area, after our first section, we'll start to get a bit of disconnection. And as we progress forward, that disconnection will increase. Once the hair is dry, we can check in as much as we want. That gives us an open plan throughout this cut. So again, working forward, over directing back onto that same guideline. So I'm building up length via over direction. Yeah, and make sure again, you're combing that hair super clean from roots to ends, and at this hairline, the hair is a little bit finer, so you should slack off on the tension just a little bit. Okay, and the opposite on the left side, it's the same exact technique. The only difference is I'm taking a little bit of the guideline from the right. So now I have 3 guidelines to work. I have a piece of the right, I have the back, and have some of the side. Combing the hair, elevating back onto that same point. Watching the stroke count. You really don't need to comb out that small of a section too many times. At best, you're looking at like once or twice. With that intention. If you're not thinking about what you're doing, you'll find that your stroke count just goes crazy. You'll be combing that count, that section out like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. With intention, you can nail it down to once or twice. And the great thing about intention, it makes your work cleaner, faster. You'll use less effort and get better results. It's like that 80-20 rule because you're using your brain. Your brain is your #1 tool. It's way better than your scissors. So just get in the habit of using that brain and just push that brain. Okay, so again, this final section, just a little bit less tension just to allow for that jumpiness at the crown, at the hairline. Push the hair around, making visual assessments. And now I'll start my blow dry. For the blow dry, I'll just go in and I'll just flat wrap this entire cut. I'm not looking for any artificial poof. I'll be pushing the hair in tons and tons of different directions. I want like organic, natural, shiny, and I want like a crazy amount of movement. Okay, so now that the hair is dry, I'll go and clean out my outline. So I'll go work with this front hairline and the sideburns. I'll cut in like a nice little angle there, and I'll for sure go and clean up around the ears. The cleaner this line is, the overall your detail work, like those longer lanes, will look a lot stronger. If the outline is like messy and like oof, everything else, no matter how perfectly you cut it, it'll have a tendency of looking very oof. Oof isn't a good thing. You don't want oof, won't increase your retention. So still working. Now cleaning out that outline to the back. I want to make her neck longer, so just like cut in a steeper angle. If I want her hair wide to make her neck look wider, then I'll cut it in more of a square angle. But longer necks look more attractive, so that's why I chose those longer angles. Now just to the hairline there, I got inspired. So I'm gonna go and cut in a little loop. I'm gonna cut that nape area. So I'm not cutting in a hard line. I'm cutting in a curved line, which is more challenging, but aesthetically, it looks a trillion times better than a nasty square line. Details always show. Okay, just working in those monkey hairs, and when I work in this curved line, I'm just using the tips of my shears. Now going to the top, I'm just texturizing, cross-checking, removing weight. Now for this area at the crown, I'm going to break it up a bit more than I normally would, just because I want it to naturally pop up. And she has these 2 awesome cowlicks that will also encourage that end result. So again, still texturizing. And now go in here and I'll just like open and close my shears really quick, and I'm aiming at like roots to mid ends, which again will give me a lot of lift. So there's a lot of different ways to texture the hair. Just make sure the technique that you choose fits the end result that you're aiming for. It's all about intention. Alright, well, I hope you love this cut. It's one of my favorite. The SS technique. Enjoy.